Top 10 movies of 1994. That's right, we're doing this. Why 1994? Because you clicked on the video. And why not? At number 10, we have Four Weddings and a Funeral. Grew up watching it now and then. It wasn't like a regular thing I watched. That would be strange, I think. Hugh Grant? He's not the only person in the movie. It's a good cast. It's a British rom-com. It's sad. It's funny. I'm not sure what you're expecting. There are a few rules with this series. Number one, they have to be released on the year on IMDb. It's whatever IMDb says it was released. Whatever year IMDb says it was released is what I have to put on the list. Oh, fuck. Why can't I fucking do this sentence? First rule for these lists is that I can only use movies from the year that IMDb says it was released on. While most of the time they come out maybe the year after in most cinemas, they're usually at a festival or something like that. And that's what IMDb has decided to use as its release date. That's what I'm going to be going off just to be consistent. Second rule is some movies I'll have a lot to talk about, others I will have nothing to say about, others I will purposefully not say anything about. By the way, I keep referencing IMDb, not Rotten Tomatoes, and yes, that's how I say it. I don't like Rotten Tomatoes because every time I go on there, it just comes up with this message saying something about ad blocker, and I just click off. So I don't know. Is there even reviews on there? What I do know is that IMDb lets anyone on and anyone can rate anything out of 10. And I think that gives you more of an average score because not everyone just loves or hates a movie, you know? Most people in the range of like 4 to 7, most movies, right? When you get really good, then 8, 9, maybe even 10. And when you hate a movie, it's like 3, 2, 1. How often is it you sit down and watch a movie you hate? And I don't mean like in the room sense that it's so bad that you're sitting there loving it. You pretty much never do it unless you don't know what it is and it's just on. But most of the time you're going to leave, right? You're not going to sit through that entire thing. Movie ratings are pretty dumb. And I'll get more into that as I do the series that I'm doing, top 10 movies of each year. I'll be going through chronologically and I'm going to go backwards too. I'm going to go forwards all the way to the end of time, which is like probably only 100 years from now. And I'm going to go all the way back, also about 100 years to the first movie. Some years I'm sure I haven't seen any movies from. This year, did I mention? I've seen every movie of 1994. That is how I'm able to tell you this list confidently, knowing that this is the correct top 10 and that anyone else saying any other movies as the top 10 of this year, they're wrong because they probably actually haven't seen every movie released in the year. I have, and I've actually seen every movie released in every year on all of these lists that I will be releasing. Also, if you disagree with this list, or you think that I've put any movie in the wrong position, or are missing movies, or some up here shouldn't be here, guess what? You're wrong. I've seen them all. Not just these 10, but all of them from this year, according to IMDb. Not Rotten Tomatoes, doesn't exist. Number 9 is Dumb and Dumber. Dumb and Dumber is one of the smartest movies ever made. Really, it's dumb. It's silly. It's purposefully silly. It's purposefully dumb. It's got Jim Carrey. He will probably be a recurring actor in these lists. I love Jim Carrey, especially in the 90s. I know there are people that don't like Jim Carrey, so if you don't like him, it's not a movie for you. The rest of you have already seen it. There's nothing else to say here. Number 8. Okay, this is pretty silly. Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, is my number 8. This movie's aged horribly. Just don't think too much about especially the ending, okay? Just roll with it. It's pretty silly. But most of the movie's pretty good, pretty clever. It's much more clever than Dumb and Dumber. No surprise there. And Jim Carrey is at his most Jim Carrey. Like, everything he does is over the top and perfect. Number 7, Forrest Gump. That's right. It's at my number 7. A lot of people probably put this higher. Some people, it's their favorite movie. I like it. I like Tom Hanks, like that famous line from Tropic Thunder, never go full. So he does a really good job at playing it pretty safe. I think my favorite thing in the movie is actually the love interest. It's almost like in a sitcom when they have a will they, won't they. It just keeps going on and on. And you're like, yeah, come on. And the thing I don't like in the movie is when he's edited into real footage or goes to real historic events. I actually hate that. I think it's really lame and takes me out of the movie, and I just get caught up in thinking like, how do they film that? Or how do they edit that? So I don't really like that. I much prefer the scenes of him, just running or talking to someone, running, whether it's running. So that's number 7. Number 6, one of the best cinema experiences ever I've heard. I don't know, because I was way too young when this came out. It's Speed. Speed is awesome. The first time you see Speed, it's probably the best movie you've ever seen in that moment. Then you think about it later and you're like, whatever. But it's kind of like that movie, A Quiet Place. When I saw that in the cinema, which I did see in the cinema, it was unreal. Everyone was dead silent. I've never been in a full packed cinema where there's hundreds of people. They all stopped eating their popcorn. Speed had the same thing going on. It wasn't that the cinema was quiet, it was just that the movie is so intense. You were constantly on the edge of your seat. It is non-stop, pretty much straight away, all the way to the end. Very cool. And if you haven't seen the Father Ted parody of it, watch it. It's awesome. So that's my number 6. Number 5. This is ridiculous. We've got a third Jim Carrey movie. How is he in so many movies this year? It's The Mask. While Ace Ventura is him at his most Jim Carrey, The Mask is him just off his tits. Bombastic beyond bombastic. He is just smoking. He's pulling out condoms, bulging eyes, tongue rolling across the room, looking at a girl. Was my favorite movie as a child up until probably the age of about 10. Probably my favorite movie until The Lord of the Rings, actually. Awesome special effects. The cartoon elements are perfectly blended into the style of the movie. So it's obviously very 90s style, so it's very wacky and over the top. While the animation back then wasn't nearly as good as it is now, especially for CGI, it's actually got so much character and they put so much effort into it that I think it holds up better than most CGI, even from like stuff from 5 or 6 years ago. I won't even say what happens, but it's very funny and unpredictable, surprisingly unpredictable. It's probably got a kind of a cliche plot, but you won't expect what happens within that framework. Number 4 is, it's a cult movie, it's The Crow. So the first thing usually people talk about with The Crow is Brandon Lee and his unfortunate passing. Yes, that is a big part of it. He died in the making of the movie, and he's really good in it. And it's a shame, because I think that was the thing, is almost like Heath Ledger as the Joker. People saw from this movie the potential. That was my number 4, The Crow. Now on to my number 3. Don't kill me that it's at my number 3 spot, but number 3 is Shawshank Redemption. That's right. I think, is it still number 1 on IMDb? It was for a very long time. It's either 1 or 2 or 3. It's really high up there. I think most people probably put it as the number 1 that came out this year. I like Shawshank Redemption. I've seen it several times. First time I saw it was, I believe, in school. Most movies you watch in school just instantly get this boring thing. Like, teachers want you to watch this. So it just became not cool. However, Shawshank Redemption was still good. So there was a few movies that were so good that they still felt good while you're at school. And I've watched it many times since then. I think anyone can actually watch it. Because I was a kid in school when I watched it. So, I mean, if I liked it then, and out of school, and as an adult, I think anyone can like it. Maybe not little kids, but, pretty much everyone. So, number 3, Shawshank Redemption. Number 2, probably Johnny Depp's best movie ever, Ed Wood. This movie's kind of special to me. I first saw it at a friend's house with his dad, who has now passed away. Rest in peace. He was the best, and he had really good taste in movies. He probably helped me form a taste in movies, because we'd watch a few movies. Black and white. What the hell are they doing? I think they have color in the 90s, right? Some of these other movies have color, pretty sure. My memory of them, they're all in black and white. But that's just because I'm getting old now, and everything old's in black and white. For some reason, that is just a massive put-off, being in black and white. I didn't like black and white movies. I didn't like watching movies with subtitles, but this is how you develop an interest in those movies. You start by watching one. This doesn't have subtitles, unless you want it to. You watch a black and white movie, you're like, oh, actually, that was pretty good. You watch another one, another one, another one. You stop even caring that they're in black and white. In fact, you might go, that's an interesting artistic decision they made, making this movie. Ed Wood is about movies. It's about the worst movie maker of all time. In fact, if you watch his movies, which I have done, I've gone back and watched his movies, they're pretty bad. They're pretty, like, so bad they're good, like very bad acting and bad special effects and everything. So what does this terrible director do? He cross-dresses. He gets picked on. Not because he's cross-dressing necessarily, but because he's weird. Or at least everyone thinks he's weird. He's actually a creative genius, I think. The real character he's a real person. It's a true story, this movie. Ed Wood. Edward Wood. I believe that's his name. That's my number 2. Very charming movie. If you haven't seen it, definitely watch it. Best Johnny Depp performance probably ever. Moving on to my number 1. You probably guessed it already. It's a huge movie. It's a cult classic. It's Pulp Fiction. Number 1 of 1994. Pulp Fiction. It's Quentin Tarantino. Early stage, so it's his second written directed movie. It's raw. It's out of order. It's confusing the first time you watch it. The second time you watch it, it's just pure enjoyment. The third time you watch it, you see more things. I think it's really the third time you watch it is when you are like, oh, that's that actor, or oh, I see what they're doing here, or we don't even see what's in the case, things like that. That's the third time you watch it. Then you get to the 4th, 5th, 6th time, and now over, 30? Yeah, it's 30 years later. Is it? 30 years later, I watched it again this year. Holy crap. I am so many of those characters. I've just turned into them. I was sitting next to my friend and we looked at each other and we're like, I'm Mia. It wasn't just her look. Obviously, I'm not a girl, but it was the attitude she had and her just silliness. When you're introduced to her, John Travolta's character is kind of nervous, and her almost silliness, I'll just simplify it by calling it that. It's much more nuanced than that. Really comforts him, and it's a bit of a romance. There's romance, there's action, there is some dark, messed up shit in the middle of the movie. This is not a child-friendly movie by any means. Pulp Fiction, classic, beyond classic. Definitely Quentin Tarantino's best, if not second best. Some people maybe third best. Okay, here's the thing. No one agrees with this list. Maybe you like all the movies on the list. No one will have them in the same order. And actually, I don't think anyone will have those 10. I think most people would swap out a movie here or there for something that I didn't even mention. Some lists in the future, I will probably do honorable mentions. For these old ones, there are actually less movies that I think are good. Now, a lot of people rave about movies in the 90s because, yes, the best movies ever were, if not released in the 90s, filmed in the 90s. Now, all we look back on is those awesome movies. Those 90s movies that were good were the best. It's just now those kids that grew up watching them are beginning to make them. Because the people making the movies in the 90s, Quentin Tarantino, Scorsese, Spielberg, they grew up watching like 40s, 50s, 60s movies. Like, they didn't even have color back then. Anyway, that's it. That's my number 1, Pulp Fiction. I'm not sorry. And also, I'm right. And you're wrong. I'll see you in the next one.